Evelyn Shaw opened her Medicare statement on a Tuesday morning and discovered her protégé had been using her identity to steal from the government and from her while she lay recovering from surgery. The kitchen in her Baltimore row house smelt like Earl Grey and toast. October light slanted through the window over the sink, catching dust motes and the steam rising from her cup. She'd lived in this house for 42 years, raised 2 kids here, buried a husband from this address. The mail came at 9:15 every morning like clockwork, dropped through the brass slot in the front door with a soft thud that still made her heart lift up a little. Old habit from the years when her daughter sent postcards from college. Today's mail had included the usual circulars, a fundraising letter from Johns Hopkins, her alma mater, and the quarterly Medicare summary she barely glanced at anymore. Except this time, something caught her eye. A line item for chemotherapy administration, August 15th. Evelyn had been in post-op recovery on August 15th, 3 weeks after a double knee replacement that had left her immobile and furious. She hadn't administered chemotherapy to anyone. She hadn't been in a hospital except as a patient. She set down her tea and pulled the statement closer, her reading glasses sliding down her nose. More line items, infusion therapy, consultation codes, follow-up appointments. Thousands of dollars billed under her NPI number, her provider credentials for services she'd never rendered to patients she'd never seen. Her hands started to shake, and it wasn't from age. Someone had stolen her professional identity. And as she scanned the dates, all falling within the 8 weeks she'd been flat on her back, doped up on Percocet and barely able to walk to the bathroom, she felt the pieces click together with sickening clarity. Only one person had access to her files, her credentials, her practice codes during that time. One person who'd visited her at home, who'd helped her sort through insurance paperwork when the pain made her head swim, who'd insisted on taking care of the administrative stuff so she could focus on healing. Dr. Marcus Chen, her protégé, the young oncologist she'd mentored for 5 years, the one she'd recommended for privileges at Union Memorial, the one she'd trusted enough to hand over her patient files when she retired 2 years ago, the one she'd thought of almost like a son. Evelyn stood up too fast and had to grip the counter. Her knees, still healing, still angry, protested with sharp jolts of pain. She ignored them. She picked up her phone and dialed the number she'd called 1,000 times over the years, Marcus's cell. It rang 4 times, then his voice, cheerful and distracted. "Dr. Shaw, how are the knees? You walking without the cane yet?" She closed her eyes, took a breath. "Marcus, I need you to explain something to me." A pause, just a beat too long. "Of course. What's up?" "I'm looking at my Medicare statement. There are claims here, services billed under my name in August while I was recovering." Silence on the other end. Not the confused silence of someone trying to understand, the frozen silence of someone who's been caught. "Marcus?" His voice cracked. "I can explain, Dr. Shaw. I can explain everything. It's not... I was going to fix it. I was going to repay." "Were you billing Medicare for fake treatments using my credentials?" Another pause. Then quietly, "Yes." The word hit like a fist. Evelyn sank back into her chair, the phone pressed so hard against her ear it hurt. "How much?" I'd have to check the... "How much, Marcus?" "About $40,000. The room tilted. $40,000 fraudulent claims, federal crimes, using her name, her reputation, her 40 years of credibility in the medical community. Why? Her voice came out strangled. I was desperate. I'm so sorry, Dr. Shaw. I'm so sorry. I never meant to. I was drowning, and I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed, and She hung up. For a long time, she just sat there staring at the Medicare statement, at the line items that represented not just theft, but a profound, almost surgical betrayal. Marcus knew what this could do to her. He knew the risk of Medicare fraud investigations, the scrutiny, the potential blowback on her even though she'd been the victim. He knew, and he'd done it anyway. Evelyn had spent 40 years as an oncologist. She'd seen every kind of human frailty, every desperate choice, every moment when people broke under the weight of impossible circumstances. But this wasn't a patient making a bad decision under duress. This was a colleague, a protégé, someone she trusted with her legacy, using her identity to commit federal crimes. And the betrayal felt like something metastasizing in her chest. She opened her laptop and started making calls. The Medicare fraud hotline put her through to an investigator within 20 minutes. Evelyn laid it out calmly, clinically, the way she used to present cases at tumor board meetings. The dates, the amounts, the access Marcus had during her recovery. Her voice didn't shake. 30 years of delivering bad diagnoses taught her how to compartmentalize emotion. "We'll open an investigation immediately," the agent said. "This is healthcare fraud, identity theft, and potentially multiple counts of false claims. He's looking at serious prison time." "Good," Evelyn said. Next call, the Maryland Board of Physicians. She filed a formal complaint, attaching the Medicare statement and a timeline of Marcus's access to her files. The intake coordinator's voice was sympathetic, but bureaucratic. "Dr. Shaw, I am so sorry this happened to you. We'll expedite the investigation. If the allegations are substantiated, we'll move to suspend his license pending a hearing." "How long does that take?" "Emergency suspension can happen within 72 hours. Evelyn nodded, even though the woman couldn't see her. "Do it." Third call, her attorney, Mitchell Rosen, who'd handled her estate planning and the sale of her practice. He listened without interrupting, then said, "Evelyn, this is criminal. You need to file a police report. I'll come with you." They met at the Baltimore Police Department's Northern District Station that afternoon. Evelyn brought her Medicare statements, a flash drive with copies of emails between her and Marcus, and a printout of the Maryland Medical Practice Act sections on fraud and professional misconduct. The detective, a tired-looking woman named Ortiz, took notes and looked increasingly grim. "Dr. Shaw, just to be clear, you're pressing charges." "Absolutely. This will destroy his career." "I know." Detective Ortiz nodded slowly. "Okay, we'll coordinate with the Medicare Fraud Unit and the U.S. Attorney's Office. He'll be arrested within the week." Evelyn signed the complaint. Her signature looked shaky, spidery. She hated that. Outside the station, Mitchell put a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" "No." She stared across the parking lot at the bare October trees. "But I will be, once he's held accountable." That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her knees throbbing despite the ice packs, her mind churning through the mechanics of what would happen next. Marcus would be arrested, his license suspended, his name in the papers, local at first, then maybe picked up nationally if the fraud was big enough. Professional disgrace, likely prison time given the dollar amounts and the federal charges. It was what he deserved. She knew that. He'd committed serious crimes. He'd used her, violated her trust, put her reputation at risk. Justice demanded consequences. But she kept thinking about the Marcus she'd known, the earnest resident who'd stayed late reviewing pathology slides, who'd cried the first time he lost a patient, who'd sent her a handwritten thank you note when she wrote his recommendation letter for fellowship, the young doctor who'd called her last Christmas just to check in, who'd asked about her grandkids and remembered their names. Where had that person gone? When had he turned into someone could do this? She got up around 2 a.m. and made chamomile tea, sat at the kitchen table in her bathrobe, the house creaking around her in the darkness. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Dr. Shaw, this is Marcus. Please don't block me. I know I don't deserve to ask, but can we talk? I need to explain. I'm not asking you to drop the charges. I just need you to understand why." Evelyn stared at the message. Her first instinct was to delete it, block the number, let the legal system grind forward. But something stopped her. Maybe curiosity. Maybe 40 years of training that said you always got the full history before making a diagnosis. She didn't reply, but she didn't block him either. The next morning, her phone rang at 7:30. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but on the fourth ring, she picked up. "Dr. Shaw, this is Jennifer Calloway. I don't know if you remember me." Evelyn's brain rifled through decades of patience. Jennifer, stage 3 breast cancer, 2013? Yes, a soft laugh. "I can't believe you remember." "I remember all my patients, Jennifer. How are you?" "I'm good. I'm great, actually. 10 years cancer-free next month." Her voice was warm, almost trembling. "Dr. Shaw, I'm calling because I just heard you retired and I realized I never properly thanked you." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You don't need to thank me. I was just doing my job." "No," Jennifer's voice got firmer. "You saved my life, not just with the chemo, but with how you treated me. I relapsed twice. Do you remember? After the first round, I was so scared and I gave up. I stopped coming to appointments, and you didn't give up on me. You called me every week. You said healing isn't linear. You said I could change, that I could fight, even when I didn't believe it." Evelyn closed her eyes. She did remember. Jennifer was a tough case. Young, single mom, terrified. The first relapse had nearly broken her. Evelyn spent hours on the phone with her, convincing her to come back, to try again. "You told me people aren't their worst moments. You said everyone deserves a chance to get back up. And because you believed that, I'm here. I'm alive. My daughter just started college, Dr. Shaw. She's studying nursing because of you." Evelyn's hand shook. "I'm so glad, Jennifer. Truly. I just wanted you to know, whatever you're facing now, whatever you're going through, you changed my life because you didn't give up on me when I failed. Thank you." They talked for a few more minutes, and then Jennifer hung up, leaving Evelyn sitting in her quiet kitchen with tears streaming down her face. "You didn't give up on me when I relapsed 3 times. You said healing isn't linear." The words echoed in her skull. She thought about Marcus, about the charges she'd filed, the machinery of justice already in motion, grinding toward an outcome that would obliterate him. And she thought about what Jennifer had said. "You told me people aren't their worst moments." Was she really about to do to Marcus what she'd spent her career refusing to do to her patients? Give up at the first failure? Evelyn sat at her kitchen table for a long time, the morning light shifting across the floor. Then she picked up her phone and called Mitchell. I need to meet with Marcus Chen, privately, with you present, before the arrest happens. Mitchell was silent for a beat. Evelyn, are you sure? No, but I need to hear him out, just once. They met 2 days later at Mitchell's office in Towson, a conference room with a long table, leather chairs, and a view of the parking lot. Marcus arrived looking like he hadn't slept in a week, his eyes red-rimmed, his usually neat hair disheveled. He sat across from Evelyn and couldn't meet her gaze. Mitchell set a digital recorder on the table. Everything said here is on the record. Dr. Chen, you understand that Dr. Shaw has already filed complaints with Medicare, the medical board, and the police. This meeting doesn't change that unless she decides otherwise. Marcus nodded. I understand. Evelyn folded her hands on the table, looked at him until he finally looked back. Why, Marcus? Just tell me why. His face crumpled. For a moment she thought he'd break down completely, but he pulled it together, barely. I have a gambling problem. Poker, mostly, online. It started in residency, just a way to blow off steam, but it got worse. He swallowed hard. I'm in debt, $140,000, and I was taking pills, Adderall at first to stay awake, then Vicodin after a back injury, then it just spiraled. You weren't aware of the exponential growth in opiate usage here? Didn't you know that? I know that, but I couldn't be the one with the disease. I had to be the competent doctor, the protégé who was going to carry on your legacy. So I hid it, and the debt kept growing, and when you had your surgery, I thought I could. He looked down. I thought I could use your credentials to bill a few fake claims, pay off the worst of it, and then stop. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd fix it before you ever found out. $40,000, Marcus. That's not a few claims. I know. It got out of control. I kept telling myself it was the last time, and then I'd lose more at poker, or I'd need another prescription, and he put his head in his hands. I'm not making excuses. What I did was unforgivable. I destroyed your trust. I put your reputation at risk. I committed federal crimes. I deserve whatever happens to me. Evelyn sat back, studied him. She'd spent decades reading people, patients who lied about smoking, about drinking, about taking their meds. She knew what denial looked like, what manipulation looked like. This wasn't that. This was a man in free fall, grasping for something solid and finding nothing. You know I could send you to prison, she said quietly. Yes. You'd lose your license permanently. You'd be a felon. You'd never practice medicine again. I know. Is that what you want? He looked up, confused. What? Do you want to practice medicine again, or are you done? Marcus's face twisted. I don't know if I deserve to. I didn't ask if you deserve it. I asked if you want it. A long silence. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear. More than anything. Evelyn nodded slowly. She glanced at Mitchell, who was watching her with something between concern and fascination. Then she looked back at Marcus. Here's what's going to happen, she said. You're going to self-report to the medical board today. You're going to admit to everything, the fraud, the addiction, the debt. You're going to enter a treatment program for gambling and substance abuse, residential if necessary. You're going to voluntarily surrender your medical license for 2 years. Marcus's eyes went wide. Dr. Shaw, I'm not finished. Her voice was steel. You're going to repay every cent of the fraudulent charges with interest. I don't care if it takes you 10 years. You'll sign a contract outlining a payment plan. During the 2 years your license is suspended, you're going to work as a medical assistant, a phlebotomist, whatever you can get. You're going to attend 12-step meetings, you're going to see a therapist, and you're going to complete 1,000 hours of free clinic work in underserved communities. She leaned forward. I will monitor your progress, monthly reports, random drug tests. If you slip once, if you gamble, if you use, if you miss a payment or a meeting, the deal is off and I pursue full prosecution, prison, permanent license revocation, everything. Do you understand? Marcus was staring at her like she'd just offered him a lifeline standing on a crumbling cliff. You're giving me a chance? I'm giving you accountability, Evelyn corrected. You're giving me accountability, Evelyn corrected. This isn't mercy. This is harder than prison, Marcus. Prison would be 2 years and then you're done. This is 2 years of proving every single day that you can be better than your worst moment. Most people can't do it. Are you one of them? No, I'll do it. All of it. I swear. Then we start now. She slid a piece of paper across the table. Mitchell drafted a contract. Read it, sign it, and then we call the medical board together. Marcus read through the document with trembling hands. 4 pages of terms, conditions, benchmarks. He signed without hesitation. Why are you doing this? He asked, voice raw. Evelyn thought about Jennifer Calloway, about 40 years of patients who'd relapsed, who'd given up, who'd fought their way back, about the core principle she'd built her career on. Healing isn't linear. She met his eyes. Because I spent my whole career treating cancer, and the thing about cancer is you can't just cut out the tumor and call it cured. You have to treat the whole person, address the causes, support the healing, or it comes back. She met his eyes. Sending you to prison would be cutting out the tumor. This is actually trying to heal you, and if it works, maybe we heal a broken system too. The first year was brutal. Marcus entered a 30-day residential treatment program in Pennsylvania, then moved into a halfway house. He got a job as a medical assistant at a community health clinic in West Baltimore, making 1/3 of what he'd earned as an oncologist. He attended GA meetings 5 days a week, saw a therapist twice a week, sent Evelyn monthly reports, hours worked, meetings attended, payments made. Evelyn read every report, watched for signs of backsliding. For the first 6 months, she half expected him to disappear, to relapse, to prove that her gamble had been foolish. He didn't. Slowly, incrementally, Marcus rebuilt. He paid back the fraudulent charges in installments, $500 a month, sometimes more when he picked up extra shifts. He logged volunteer hours at the free clinic, administering vaccines, doing intake assessments, holding the hands of uninsured patients who reminded him why he'd wanted to be a doctor in the first place. And Evelyn started to see something she hadn't expected. Other doctors reaching out, quietly, confidentially. Colleagues who'd heard through the grapevine what she'd done, who had their own struggles, addiction, burnout, ethical lapses they were terrified to admit. She started meeting with them, in her living room, over coffee, one-on-one. She listened to stories of opioid dependence, of gambling debts, of corners cut under pressure, of young doctors drowning in student loans and impossible expectations. The system is broken, one young surgeon told her, crying in Evelyn's kitchen. We're supposed to be perfect. We can't admit we're struggling, so we hide it until it destroys us. Evelyn thought about that conversation for days. Then she called Mitchell again. I want to start a program, she said, for doctors like Marcus, confidential support, intervention before they commit fraud or hurt patients, mental health resources, financial counseling, addiction treatment. Call it, I don't know, Healing the Healers. Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Then, You'd need funding, liability insurance, a board. I'll figure it out. She did. Evelyn pulled together a small board. Mitchell, a psychiatrist friend, a former colleague from Hopkins. They got seed funding from a foundation interested in physician wellness. They set up a hotline, a website, a confidential intake process. Within 6 months, they'd helped 12 doctors. Within a year, 43. Doctors struggling with addiction, debt, depression, ethical dilemmas. Some were on the brink of fraud or malpractice. Some just needed someone to say, "You're not alone, and you can get help without destroying your career." Marcus, in his second year of suspension, became a peer counselor for the program. He shared his story at medical conferences, in resident training sessions, in quiet one-on-one conversations with doctors who saw themselves in his worst moments. "I committed Medicare fraud," he'd say, his voice steady now. "I was addicted to pills and gambling. I betrayed my mentor and nearly destroyed my career. But I got a second chance, not because I deserved it, but because someone believed that healing isn't linear. And now I'm here to tell you, if you're struggling, you don't have to hit rock bottom. You can ask for help before you hurt someone, before you hurt yourselves." The stories came back to Evelyn in fragments. A surgeon who entered rehab before his Vicodin use escalated to patient harm. A resident who got financial counseling before her debt drove her to insurance fraud. An internist who disclosed an ethical lapse to the board and got supervision instead of losing his license. 43 doctors, 43 careers saved, and, by extension, thousands of patients who'd been protected from the harm that desperation and silence could have caused. When Marcus's 2-year suspension ended, he applied for license reinstatement. The board held a hearing. Evelyn testified on his behalf, alongside letters from his therapist, his GA sponsor, the director of the free clinic where he'd worked. "Dr. Chin has completed every requirement," Evelyn told the board. "He's repaid the fraudulent charges in full. He's maintained sobriety. He's volunteered 1,200 hours, more than required. He's not the same man who committed those crimes. He's done the work to become someone better." The board reinstated his license with conditions: 5 years of supervision, random drug testing, ongoing therapy. Marcus cried in the hallway afterwards. Evelyn handed him a tissue. "Don't screw this up," she said. "I won't." He didn't. Marcus opened a practice in East Baltimore, serving uninsured and underinsured patients. He became a vocal advocate for physician mental health, writing op-eds, speaking at conferences, pushing for systemic changes in medical training to address burnout and debt. And Evelyn kept building. Healing the Healers expanded to 3 states. She wrote a paper for the Journal of Medical Ethics, and Accountability Without Annihilation, a framework for addressing physician misconduct through restoration. It became required reading in medical schools across the country.